Hello and welcome to the Book Bin. I'm Kano Barlowe, the Book Bin's proprietor. I am a self-published indie author whenever life isn't kicking me in the pants. I'm starting this channel to make a space I can dump my thoughts on many topics, namely writing, reading, and any media I might find interesting, with a specific focus on my interests in fantasy and speculative fiction. I also want to journal my writing process and have a place where I can look back on my progress. By making and posting videos publicly, I hope that I can inspire others with similar struggles to try new things, and I hope I can learn just as much from you as you can learn from me. I figure I'd try YouTube because I also want to branch out my skills, and I feel like a faceless YouTube channel is an easier medium for me than most other social media platforms out there. I'll probably make a rant video in the future about how difficult social media is as an author, but that's for later. It's worth noting that I have autism and ADHD. Why do I mention that? Well, I've tried a lot of writing advice and looked up a lot of resources online in the past, and I found many are either too general or too vague for me to take action on in a way I feel comfortable, while others may be hidden gems that I don't know if other people like me have heard before. I figure that people who like to write and read and have similar brain processes might enjoy hearing from someone with a similar brain process. If we build resources together, we might learn and grow better together than apart. Before I get into any future topics, I thought I'd start with a very simple video to establish my channel. The topic: who am I? Who is the bear behind this channel? The answer is pretty simple and probably kind of boring. I'm Kano Barlowe. I use a pen name for my creative work, which is probably another video topic for another day as well. The most important things to know about me besides being an indie author is that I'm married to a wonderful man and I'm a dad of 2 cats. I have a day job as an e-learning instructional designer, which is a fancy way of saying that I make all those compliance trainings you take virtually for your job every year. It sounds boring, but it's actually a pretty nice gig and lets me explore new creative outlets and tools. In addition to all that, I'm a pretty big nerd in the most stereotypical of ways, such as enjoying video games, board games, TTRPGs, and so on. Now that you know me at a personal level, let me pull back for a moment and discuss the creative writing aspects and personal writing aspects and history that I have under my belt. I have been writing my entire life for as long as I can remember. I remember being in elementary school and writing stories about my friends and I going on adventures. I'd print those bad boys out and give them to my friends at school, or even read to them over the phone when my parents let me. When I got older, I began writing many unfinished books, just playing with ideas and experimenting, all of it for myself. My parents let me take some writing classes for teens when I got older that taught me a lot about character development, story arcs, writing perspectives, and more. At some point, I wrote fan fiction, which is how I met my husband, and in 2024, I felt I finally had something worth publishing, so I did. My first book is a novella called Brim's Bane. This fantasy folklore story follows Sam Holgata, a printer's apprentice, struggling to make a name for himself and find his place in the world. After a deadly blizzard strikes on his journey to procure supplies for the printing press he works at, Sam comes face to face with the large beast, a werewolf, which subsequently haunts his every move, waking and sleeping. The story is a great chilly read during winter, and it's a quick read. I'm very proud of the depth in which I explore Sam's inner psyche as he faces both real-world struggles as an isolated young man and fantasy folk horror nightmares of the werewolf that preys upon him and through him. The book explores themes of self-worth and self-actualization, as well as one's inner darkness and how that darkness can fester if one refuses to shed light on it. Werewolves are my favorite classic monster, and Brim's Bane is definitely my love letter to the creature. Is anyone else excited for Robert Eggers' werewolf movie? Just me? Anyway, if any of this sounds interesting to you, I'll put a link in the description to the books to read page for the book, so you can select any retailer you prefer. Besides Brim's Bane, I have other projects in the works, though I only work on one at a time, as juggling multiple would be too difficult for me given my day job and other responsibilities. Sometimes I do world building, outlining, or other notes for my projects, but I only draft one, which is another topic for a video. I should write all of these down so I don't forget. Anyway, my current project is softly titled The Sun-Touched Sands. It's a mythic fantasy in an unusual world that strays far from the typical trappings of a fantasy world. While many fantasies are in a Lord of the Rings-esque medieval fantasy realm with forests and mountains and vast oceans and rivers, maybe an enchanted lake or two, The Sun-Touched Sands is in a completely different realm entirely. Imagine a land all made of desert, of sparkling bits of metal strewn about in the sand. You look upward, and instead of the normal sky, there is a vast, endless sea miles above your head, and you watch the whitecaps as the waves move. An oasis appears before you, and as you enter its boundaries, you feel the gravity shift. Perhaps it's lighter or heavier. Nature blossoms all around you, but instead of desert life, it's ocean life, with kelp forests and tall coral and fish flying through the air. When you see a village appear in the oasis, you see people made from metal walking about their lives and under a golden imperial banner. Each of these metal folk have their own magical qualities based on the metal they're born as, or maybe they're an alloy of two metals, though they don't inherently have this magic by nature of birth, only a few do. This is the world of the Sun-Touched Sands. The story that I follow within this strange world is that of Quill of Clan Kasrai, an Argentum who works in a gang called the Third Eyes. Living in the oppressive Imperium Solaris, Quill makes his money taking on jobs for the gang, but he longs to dismantle the Aura's control over much of the sands. A new job lands in his lap and provides him the perfect opportunity to do just that: infiltrate the Imperial Palace and find the Emperor's Argentum concubine, a seer like himself who was on the verge of discovering the next falling star. As all in the sands know, anyone who possesses the falling star is granted one impossible wish that can change the course of the entire world, and Quill is determined to get it. Using his favorite method, disguises and subterfuge, he manages to walk his way into the palace posing as a gift from a rivaling kingdom during peace negotiations, and he's married off to the Emperor's right-hand man. Gathering information and locating the concubine proves difficult, especially when Quill finds himself entangled with a Titan Palace guard named Raheem, a man who is surprisingly gentle and soft-spoken, and who seems to be one of the only people in Quill's life who sees him as a person, not as a tool or an object to be used. Distracting himself with an intense love affair is probably a dangerous choice, but who's to say it won't benefit him in the end? The story is a mythic fantasy, though I am also dipping my toes into an LGBT romantasy with a large focus on Quill and Raheem's torrent affair. Quill's journey explores many themes, namely self-destroying hatred, justice and vengeance, self-worth, and what it means to be seen and accept love when you have tall walls to protect yourself from heartache. If this sounds at all interesting to you, feel free to follow my channel, as I'll try to make a video every so often just to talk about my work, its progress, fun facts, and anything else that feels appropriate. Now that you know my main projects, the last thing I can think of to discuss in an About Me style video is probably just talking about some general interests so you can get an idea of where a lot of my inspiration comes from. If you find you like these topics too, I might be an author you'd like. My biggest interest is fantasy, and that comes in all sorts of ranges. I love mythic, classic, high and low, you name it. I'm not as big into sci-fi, but because I'm not as interested in a lot of the high-tech stuff. The few sci-fi exceptions I tend to like are ones about other worlds that are more low-tech or more grunge like cyberpunk. For inspiration and interests, I've divided the topic by books, games, and other media like movies and TV. In terms of books, my primary inspirations over the years have been books like The Lord of the Rings, cop-out I know, The Ranger's Apprentice, which I unfortunately haven't actually finished, but they were very important to me during formative years, like in my teens. And currently, The Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson, as well as his Mistborn series, might be another cop-out, I know. There's another series of books that I'm reading currently that are also providing me with inspiration. I'll mention those more in a moment. The next medium, and arguably the one that has most inspired me, is video games. The biggest ones for me in general are The Elder Scrolls for the lore and absolutely creative wackiness the world brings, my favorites of the series being Arena and Morrowind, and Dragon Age. Dragon Age is one that I have a lot of love-hate for, but it has some of my favorite world building of any fantasy, namely in the form of the elves, especially the Dalish. I highly prefer nature-based world building, and I love the elven pantheon. I have mixed feelings on where the series took that pantheon, for better or worse, but at least for Dragon Age Origins and Dragon Age 2, I have a lot of love. This is also the series with books I have finally begun to read, though I'm still only in the early pages of the first book. The last game I'll mention, one that's smaller in influence but I'm still crazy about, is probably Small Land, an RPG in which you play a little fae-like person, and you can tame bugs and explore the wilderness, create tree forts. I highly recommend. It's very fun, and it makes my brain buzz about possibilities. Related to video games, I also like board games and TTRPGs. I'm a big fan of the classics like D&D, but I've also gotten into board games like Mansions of Badness, and I want to expand and look into other adventure board games. I'd also love to do a TTRPG group again someday, but I usually have to be the DM, and to be honest, I'm not very good at it, so I don't want to subject my peers to that. My last source of inspiration would be movies and shows, but to be honest, I don't have much any of those. I don't really watch a lot of movies or TV. I used to when I was younger, but not much anymore. The closest I can think of to fill this section is probably the Avatar movies. I know some people will probably scoff at that, but you're talking to someone who watched the first two movies a couple of times, taking world-building notes on the environment. My focus is less about the actual story being told and more about the world and environment, how the ecosystem works together in harmony, and the natural feel of Pandora's flora, fauna, and people. I find that very inspiring, and so I love the movies for what it can visually bring and what stories it tries to tell purely by that environment. With all that, I don't want to keep you here any longer than I already have. If you've made it this far on an About Me video alone, thank you so much, and I appreciate your viewership. If you'd like to subscribe, like, comment, whatever that hype button thing I've heard about is, that would be cool. Thank you so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you around the book bin in the future.